If you keep up to date with the news, you may well believe that driverless cars are going to be zipping people around by the 2020s or the early 2020s. So surely learning to drive will become a thing of the past, right? Let's take a moment to think about the hurdles that need to be overcome before driverless cars can truly replace the driving license. Firstly, a computer will need to know how to deal with roads that are partially broken, have poor or a lack of road signs and markings, two-way roads that are only really wide enough for one car, and then there's the fact that they will have to integrate themselves to roads that already have human drivers on them. Then there are the ethical dilemmas, like who the car should save in an emergency, the impact on our economy of all the jobs that will be lost to driverless cars. And then there is just the question of, is it really a good idea to automate our entire lives? Humans find it very easy to determine what we see. When we look out the window, we can pretty much instantly identify all the objects we see. We can tell if the objects are closer to us or further away. We can tell if they're stationary or moving, and if they are moving, we normally have a pretty good idea if they're getting closer or getting further away from us. And if we see a road without any road markings, we normally can tell the difference between the road and the pavement. Computers find this all very hard because a camera can't relay the depth perception a computer needs to determine if, say, this is the road, or this is the road, or this is the road. Now, that can be a bit of a problem. A computer would rely on very good road markings, for which, at least in the UK, don't often exist. So what computers do to help them, at least in driverless cars, is they use a combination of radar, which uses radio waves, and LiDAR, which bounces lasers off of objects to determine how far away things are. This may help a computer to determine where a raised curb is, because if the radio waves bounce off of the raised curb, well, it knows where it is. But what is a computer going to do on this road where the curbs aren't raised? How is it going to know where the road finishes and the pavement starts? One solution to this problem is to only allow driverless cars to drive on predetermined routes. This is known as geofencing, but the problem with geofencing is that it's not a lot of good when you need to go out of the geofenced area. And it's only my guess that it will take a long time to be able to expand the geofenced area to include everywhere. And if it doesn't include everywhere, it's not going to replace the driving license. How is a driverless car going to deal with all these cars in the roundabout? And also, how would it deal with this bit of cardboard that's just been flipped into the air by the wind? Will a driverless car know what small objects it should stop for and what small objects it should continue over? How about SatNav mapping? It was only a few days ago that I actually drove to Wales, and I used the SatNav to get me to Wales, or mostly, should I say, because on the way there was actually a roundabout that didn't exist on the SatNav. In fact, there was actually several miles of road that didn't exist on the SatNav, and I was effectively driving off road according to the SatNav. So for driverless cars to be reliable and work, there needs to be bang up to date, up to the second SatNav mapping. Then there's the question of how driverless cars or computers are going to interact with the humans that are already on the road. The average car in the UK lasts 12.5 years, and they can easily last over 20 years when properly maintained. So therefore, it's going to take at least 20 years for all of the driven cars to be driverless cars. And why is this important? Well, if it's going to take a couple of decades to replace all of the cars, it means that the drivers and the computers are going to be mixing. What really interests me is how they'll mix. For example, if there was an unscrupulous driver who knew that a car was being driven by a computer, would that driver then pull out in front of the computer-driven car, knowing that the computer-driven car would slam on the brakes and stop, and wouldn't chase after the driver in a fit of rage. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is are the human drivers going to bully the computer drivers? I mean, humans aren't exactly renowned for being nice to one another, especially on the road. So are they going to be nice to computers? And are criminals going to take advantage of driverless cars? Are criminals going to hack into driverless cars and get the car to go where the passengers don't want it to go? Maybe it's an important person, or a person that has a lot of money that they're going to possibly hold ransom or rob. In an interview with Lex Fridman, a fellow called Elon Musk, you may have heard of him, he compared driverless cars to lifts, and how in the past a lift was operated by a human, and the human would pull a lever to get the lift to move, and then would pull that same lever to get the lift to stop in the correct place. And he said, isn't it crazy to think that a man used to operate the lift? Because a man could get it wrong. He could stop the lift between floors or get the wrong floor entirely. And he then went on to compare it with driverless cars, saying that in the future it would be crazy to believe that humans were once allowed to control death machines. Now, I have a lot of respect for the man, but I don't like calling cars death machines, especially when the engineers have spent decades designing them to be safer for the occupants, with ABS, seatbelts, airbags, crumple zones. Fact is, a car is designed to protect you, and these days it's even designed to protect pedestrians, so I wouldn't call it a death machine. To be fair to Elon, he is just trying to make cars even safer than they are now, by removing the closest thing to a death machine in the car, and that's the human. Let's move on to the ethical issues. And what I mean by ethical issues is, who should a car save in an emergency? So in this example where a pedestrian walks in front of a car, the car has the option to either turn left and hit the tree, possibly killing the occupants of the car, go straight and run the pedestrian over, likely killing the pedestrian, but it was them who walked in front of the car, remember? Or turn right and hit the oncoming car, which could have up to 5 people in it, but it calculates the impact will be less severe because the car is slightly further away and there is more braking time. I'm sure you will all have your own opinions, but I'm also sure there will be a lot of disagreements and a lot of conflict because of this. Also, would you buy a car that puts the safety of others before you? Now, I know there's plenty of other hurdles that driverless cars will have to overcome. I've just plucked some things out of thin air, some problems that I thought that might arise. But these problems have been enough to convince me that people are going to be learning to drive and getting driving licenses and needing to get driving licenses for a good while yet. On a more personal note, and my own feelings towards driverless cars, well, I'm not against progress. I think that each generation life has improved somewhat over human history. But is it a good idea to automate the service sector? In the past, us humans have spent a lot of time hunting and gathering, as you may well know. Agriculture made us a bit more productive, and the Industrial Revolution made us somewhat even more productive, allowing us to concentrate more of our time and efforts on the ever-growing service sector. But now automation, and I'm not just talking about driverless cars, I'm talking about automation of anything, is starting to replace the service sector. What will the world be like when a computer can do everything that a human can? A couple of years ago, I gave a series of refresher lessons to an 82-year-old lady whose husband was unfortunately unable to drive, so she was going to have to take the reins behind the wheel. I had the honour of actually meeting her husband, who was actually once a Formula 1 driver in 1959, and from what I could tell, he was also a bit of a legend. Moving on from that, after speaking to her for a while, I remember asking her what her thoughts were on driverless cars, and she said, when man has a button that can do everything for him, life will stop. And in some ways, I agree with her. Because if we don't have to do anything, and we don't have to be good at anything, do we really have much of a purpose? Anyway, I'm probably getting a little bit deep for the subject of this channel. Maybe the automated future consists of us all having a basic income of some kind and being able to pursue hobbies and other interests that we like. For some it might be exploring the world, for others it might just be playing computer games the whole day. Basically a permanent holiday whilst our robots look after us. Or maybe a fully automated future consists of people sitting in seats with barely the motivation to do even the simplest of tasks. Have you ever watched the film WALL-E? I don't really know what's going to happen. To be honest, I think it will be somewhere between the two. But as much as I like cruise control, and I look forward to having a car that can take the strain out of the long, monotonous motorway driving for me, I really don't think driverless cars are going to replace the driving license anytime soon. I mean, at the moment there's 2 double roundabouts in Colchester that are being converted into 2 single roundabouts, and they started, I don't know, almost a year ago now, and they've got another year until they finish. So that's almost 2 years for them to do 2 roundabouts, and for driverless cars to work, the roads need to be near enough perfect. So if it takes them 2 years to do 2 roundabouts, how long will it take them to clear up all the road markings and signs to make driverless cars work properly? So although I'm confident that driverless cars are the future and will be here at some point, if you're thinking of learning to drive and possibly thinking of waiting for a driverless car to come around, I don't think you're going to be waiting for a couple of years. In fact, I don't think you're going to be waiting for 10 years or maybe even 20 or more. I don't know how long, but I think it's a very long way off. In fact, I'll be willing to make a small bet that we'll probably have our electricity from nuclear fusion before we have driverless cars replacing the driving license. Actually, some people would say I've already bet my job on it. Hopefully YouTube will be around in 10 years and this video will still be on YouTube, and I'll be able to see how right or wrong I am. I'm just not too sure whether or not I want to be right or want to be wrong. But that's enough for this one. Please leave a comment to let me know how I can make the videos better or what videos you want to see in the future. Please like if you like, and please subscribe to get my latest videos.